What's up folks, it's your boy CJ here, back in another video. I hope you guys are doing well and doing pretty well myself. Pardon the last couple of weeks I haven't been uploading. I've been busy with my internship and stuff. But yeah, I'm back again, and from inside of this video you probably could have guessed, or you probably tuned in because you want to see anyway. So today we're going to be comparing between the NICEFOTO 60cm softbox and the GODOX 120cm softbox. Now, who is this video for? This video is intended for those that want a quality softbox at an inexpensive price and yet have no idea which one to get because they have maybe heard that the larger softbox, the softer it gets, and they have to think about the space they have and stuff, which is very true. The larger your softbox, the more softer they are. However, not everyone has the space for 120cm softbox. It's extremely big and extremely space consuming. So the NICEFOTO has a 60cm softbox, and if I'm not mistaken, that Aperture also has a similar softbox. However, Aperture one is double the price of a NICEFOTO 60cm softbox. And of course, the price between these two softboxes is very similar, thus the comparison between them two at around 250 ringgit to around 350 ringgit, somewhere there, around their price range, depending on who you buy it from, of course. So yeah, right now, today we're going to be comparing between when it has a grid and when it does not have a grid, apples to apples comparison. And if they get too overexposed, I will try to set them as best as I could. However, there might be some errors here and there. If so, please do pardon my mistakes and so forth. So yeah, I've not actually looked at the footage yet. I actually already pre-recorded and comparing it. I have not looked at it yet. We'll be looking at it together so that we have more of a in-depth comparison and much more clearer comparison. So yeah, without further ado, let's check it out together. Alright, so here we are in Lightroom. A little bit of housekeeping before I actually proceed with this. I want to tell you guys about the settings I use with it. These are actually recorded in 4K high quality mode of the EOS R5, which is 4096 and times 2160, which is the ultra wide mode. I forgot the exact dimensions for it, but yeah. These are of course recorded using the Nanlite FS300. They are lit by using that FS300. Of course, the difference between the left side here is actually the GODOX with the grid, and the right side is the NICEFOTO with the grid. And these are actually shot with 1/50th of a shutter speed, ISO to 100, and F2.8, and they are set at a white balance of 5600 Kelvin. Whereas the direction of the softbox is actually set on a 45 degrees downward, leftward, 45 degrees on my x-axis, and of course 5-degree downward from the y-axis. So it's pretty much the standard of the orientation you will be pointing at a subject, of course. Furthermore, the distance between this subject to the softbox itself is about 30 centimeters, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 30 centimeters. I have my notes right beside me, so yeah, it's at 30 centimeters away. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, let's talk about the overall. So as you can see from the GODOX right here, it's much more softer. As you can see, everything's evenly lit, evenly soft. It's nothing's harsh, nothing's too weird or out of place. Whereas if you can take a look at the NICEFOTO here, right off the bat, you can actually see that the color balance is completely different. The NICEFOTO is much more warmer, whereas the GODOX is much more cooler, much more even, and I would say a little bit more magenta compared to the NICEFOTO. Personally, I like the NICEFOTO a little bit more. The color pops out a little bit more. I'm not sure why. The settings on the camera is pretty much the same, and the background is pretty much the same. Again, as you take a look here, the greens are the same. So it's much more warmer on the NICEFOTO itself. Furthermore, if you can actually take a look, notice if we kind of zoom up right here, the most obvious part will be probably from the hair. Let me just zoom out a little bit more here. If you notice on my hair is black color. So even on the GODOX is near black, it's a little bit brownish, but it's not as brownish as NICEFOTO. So it's pretty obvious in the NICEFOTO there's a color shift to a warmer tone. Of course, on my skin tone as well, the skin tone is orange yellowish since I'm Asian. But yeah, on the NICEFOTO it's much more orange, much more obvious brownish. So yeah, this is much more warmer. On my ears you can also see it, and furthermore it's the highlights I was talking about. On the GODOX is evenly lit, but on a NICEFOTO there's a variation between the highlights, mid-tones, and the shadows itself. First thing we can take a look at from the cheek. So you can see my cheek here and this cheek right here. Of course, understand that I'm smiling, so the cheek might be protruded a little bit, might be catching a little bit more of the light, but it is a good example of what might happen if you use it in this case anyways. But it's very obvious. You can take a look at my ears. Notice my ears on the using the GODOX and my ears using the NICEFOTO. The ears on a NICEFOTO is much more blown out, a little bit more compared to NICEFOTO, which is evenly lit. But my NICEFOTO version is much more blown out. If you can see right here, of course, on my cheek right here, as well as a little bit on my forehead. But yeah, there's that. And of course, if we take a look at the shadows, the borderline between the shadows and light, you can see on the GODOX is perfectly dispersed, it's nice and soft. Whereas on the NICEFOTO, it's a little bit of edgy in comparison. You can notice here very obviously, there's a very obvious line, 2 lines here between the midtones here and the shadows. Whereas on the GODOX, much more dispersed. And furthermore, if you notice on the forehead, on the shadow side of the forehead, the NICEFOTO, it's much more darker, much more edgier. You can see the edges right here, whereas on the GODOX it's perfectly lit, just nice. So yeah. And of course, if we go following down the neck, the reason why I'm not comparing right here is because of my face muscles is completely different. But right off the bat, you can see very clearly there's a significant difference. It's much more edgier on a NICEFOTO, but I'm not gonna go into that. On the neck here, I would say it's pretty much even. A NICEFOTO, of course, is much more brighter on the highlights, brighter on the midtones, and slightly darker on slightly brighter on the shadows as well. But the brighter parts is actually around the edges. You can see there's a 7 on my neck here, whereas on my GODOX there's also a 7, but it's not as visible as the one on NICEFOTO. So yeah, there's the comparison with the grid. So let's move on without the grid. Alright, so here we have the without the grid. So I've turned them down to 25% because let's just face it, without the grid it's blown out. But in putting them side by side, 25%, the NICEFOTO is significantly blown out and it's pretty much unusable right here. So I had to turn it down even more to around 20%. And even then, I would say there's still overblown areas that I personally would go down a bit more and maybe deal with it in post. But yeah, this is what it looks like without the grid, and of course the GODOX without the grid. So as you can see, the first thing you can very much notice, the background of the NICEFOTO is much more dimmer. Simply, I would say that this happens is because of the size of the diameter of the softbox itself. Understand that the smaller the softbox is more directional the light is. It's similar to you putting a torchlight and you put a paper around the funnel and making a funnel. You may notice the light is much more concentrated. So yeah, that's basically the idea here. That is why there's less spillage into the background in comparison to the GODOX, whereas the background is completely, well, lit up basically comparison to the NICEFOTO. So that is the main difference. If we talk about the lighting itself, at 25%, I'm not happy with it. I probably go down 20%, but at the time, and from what I saw in this camera screen, it was all right. I mean, it was all right in the camera screen. I didn't really notice it until I put it inside the computer. Then I really noticed the difference. So yeah, first things first, I'm gonna try this the best I can. But yeah, you can see it's still blown out in the cheek. Although the NICEFOTO is at 20%, I probably have to go down a bit, 5%, maybe at 15%, and the GODOX probably around at 20% to make them more even. But yeah, this is what the result looks like, and the autofocus was not working very well. So yeah. And considering I have pretty much the same emotions right here, we can actually compare the shadows right here, which is really obvious, and NICEFOTO and GODOX. You would argue that, oh, they're differently lit and they're not lit properly. Look, I tried my best around here, all right? So I wanted them to be as apples to apples comparison, but yeah, you can see is on the NICEFOTO, the edge of the shadow is much more obvious comparing to the GODOX, which is much more softer in the shadows. And the neck here, as you can see, it's much more the shadow is much more obvious. This might be personal preference to you. Some people like the shadows much more edgier, some people like it a little bit more softer. Personally, I'm liking the light of the soft photo, the NICEFOTO. Of course, if you give me the choice between the two, if I were to have the GODOX with the grid on, as well as the NICEFOTO with the grid on, personally, I would select the GODOX itself. Why? Is because I'm a post-production person. I would definitely alter, probably edit it in post to deal with the highlights. Maybe bring out the highlights, bring out the mid-tones, drop down the shadows a little bit more. Whereas on the NICEFOTO, it's more of a it's much more harder to process in post, simply because the shadows is already so obvious, it's already so edgy, and the mid-tones are fine, but the highlights is just blown out right here. So if I were to, you know, lower down the highlights, maybe, or bring out the mid-tones and bring down the shadows even more, there will be very obviously a little bit different results, and not as much as great of a result as I wanted to. The GODOX will probably help me achieve a better result, in my opinion. However, if you're in a pinch or in a small space, the NICEFOTO definitely does the job well enough. And of course, come on, this is very personal preference at this point, so yeah. Anyway, so without further ado, let's get back to the channel. Alright, so you've probably already seen the comparison between the lighting and stuff. Now, you have to understand that when it comes to softboxes and how they diffuse your light, a few factors comes into mind. Now, the first thing first, we have to look at the materials of each component of a softbox itself. The first thing first we're going to be looking at is the grid itself, because number one, you understand that the usage of a grid is to limit the amount of spillage onto the background and focuses only on your subject. Of course, that depends on how far is your subject to your softbox. In my case right here, it's about an arm's length away at around 45 degrees angle of to my right and 45 degrees on vertically downward. So that's how I'm lighting my right now. However, it might be different for your case. So for the first things first we're going to be looking at is the grid and on the material itself. Now, if we look at the GODOX material, it's more of a fabric type material. It's soft, it's really it's woven fabric, it's something like that. It's very soft, very durable, I might say so, comparing to the NICEFOTO 60cm softbox grid, which in my case I can see that is more of a synthetic plastic weaving kind of thing. It doesn't really feel fabric, it feels more of a synthetic plastic, and it's I would say it will easily peel off if you're not careful with it. So in terms of durability, there's that for you. And yeah, it's more of a synthetic plastic on the NICEFOTO softbox, but it does the job all right. I mean, yeah, it's up to you how you deduce it, but for me, it does the job well enough. All right, the next thing we're gonna be looking at is, of course, is the diffuser itself. Understand that the diffuser plays a huge part at diffusing your light. And in this case, we're going to be looking at how they actually match the materials itself. So if you look at the NICEFOTO itself, the NICEFOTO material is more of a grid-like, larger grid. It's not as fine. I will show you in a bit why I mean by not as fine. It's a grid-like woven material, and you can see the grid very obviously. Whereas if you look at the GODOX one, it's also grid. However, it's much more refined, finer detail. So that's that. Although this is one of my opinions for how I see it, I find that the NICEFOTO one is not as detailed or as fine as the GODOX variant. However, it might differ for you depending on your use case and your wants and needs, of course. And yeah, like I said before, the internal diffuser of the NICEFOTO actually has a circular extra compartment. I believe it's because of the dimension itself. The dimension of the NICEFOTO is relatively much smaller comparing to the GODOX. So there's that. They might need that for much more diffusion in the middle, just so that it doesn't have a giant spotlight in the middle pointing at your face. So there's a nice thought of NICEFOTO for doing that. Most of the other much more cheaper manufacturer, I noticed they don't really think of details like that. So kudos to NICEFOTO for that. Alright, next we're going to be talking about is actually the material of the softbox itself, the internal material. Now normally you would expect to have a reflective material inside, which is of course we can see in both the NICEFOTO and the GODOX variant. However, there is a significant amount of difference between them. Now why do I say so? Now let's take a look at GODOX first. GODOX seems to have a much more of a chrome type reflective painting on it. It's extremely reflective, really glossy, really shiny, and the material of how the material is constructed is more of like a crumpled type fabric kind of thing. I'm not really sure how to explain that, but I find that it's much more like crumpled paper kind of pattern. So yeah, whereas on the NICEFOTO itself, the pattern is much more straightforward. It's a grid-like pattern and has a matte surfaces. Yeah, you heard me right. It's a matte surfaces. I wouldn't say it's 100% matte, like a moderate matte. However, it is in between glossy and matte. So there's that. I'm not sure why they did that. Instead of using fully gloss, I don't understand the science behind it. Of course, they have their own engineering science behind it. I'm going to leave it up to them. But yeah, the pattern I would say is very similar to their diffuser, which is a grid-like pattern. So there's that for you to kind of take in mind. Furthermore, I would say that in terms of durability, I find them about 50-50. The NICEFOTO one and the GODOX, they do pretty well. However, in terms of stretching it, yeah, I'm saying stretching it because of how the mechanism of how the NICEFOTO and the GODOX is significantly different. The GODOX doesn't need to, you have a multiple rod, doesn't need to put it in. It just need to click from the behind and it's done and dealt with. However, with the GODOX, you need to have the pin, so you need to stretch it out a little bit. So I would say that in terms of durability, maybe if you want to stretch it out a little bit, I would say the GODOX one would be much better. And of course, the velcros behind at the back side of the softboxes, I would say that the NICEFOTO is much more difficult to peel than just because it's much more tighter in comparison to the GODOX variant, which is just fit just nicely. So that's a little bit something there for you to understand there how this the differences between them, of course. So yeah, we have of course come to the end of our video. I hope this comparison helps you guys out on choosing which one to buy and what you need it for. Understand that the size is different, it's massive. Let me give you a dimension for that. Now for the NICEFOTO 60cm softbox, the length, width and height is actually 110 cm times 22 cm times 22 cm, whereas for the GODOX is 60 cm times 13 cm times 13 cm. So in terms of depth, the GODOX is significantly shorter, however it's significantly bigger just because of 120 cm size. And for the NICEFOTO, it's much more deeper, so it's longer like that. However, it's just much more small, has a smaller footprint. So if you have this, you need the space for the length. However, you don't need space for the width of it. So not the width, you know what I mean, how the size. I'm going to show you how big is it. I'm 180 centimeters, and this is how big of a difference between the two sizes anyways. So yeah, and furthermore, if you want to talk about weight, GODOX is significantly heavier than the NICEFOTO. How heavy? Give me a minute. Now for the GODOX is 2.12 kilograms, whereas for the NICEFOTO is 1.46 kilograms. That is about 600 grams difference. Now you might be thinking that's not a lot. Understand that the footprint is bigger, so the center of gravity is much more different, so that the weight will be considerably much more than, it feels more than just 600 grams. It feels like a couple, I think it feels a few more kilograms bigger, heavier, just because of how massive it is and the foot and the center of gravity wise. So something for you to consider there. Anyway, so we have reached the end of our video. I hope this video helps you guys out in choosing your best choices for your next softboxes or your first softbox. So yeah, do consider in mind the sizes, the weight, and of course how you're gonna light your situation and how you gonna handle that. For my case, I love this NICEFOTO so far. It's relatively cheap and it does the job well enough. Well, I'm using it right now, so you tell me. You can go back to my old video and tell me how it goes. Anyway, yeah, so if you guys like this video, do give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell button down below to help me out, and of course drop a comment down below if you guys got any question. I would love to answer your question. And without further ado, it's your boy CJ, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Out.